Your Excellency, Hassan.
Hello?
You told me I can call you Hassan, so
Yes,
I'll go with
please do. Please do. Your Excellency sounds awkward.
It's wonderful to be sitting here with you. And we were just talking. I can't believe it's been almost 2 years since the World Cup here. I mean, for you, who really was at the helm from the beginning, does it feel like it's been that long? Do you feel like it was just yesterday?
I still talk to people when they tell me about an incident that happened in 2023. I think it was a few months ago. So honestly, no. At times, I mean, time for me is just stopped to a certain extent in terms of measuring it from 2022. But at the same time, when you look back at everything that's been happening and all the kind of development, all the progress, and everything else that's been going on, it's a realization that wow, it's been a year and a half.
How are you measuring it? Would you say it was ultimately a success? Did it do what you had ultimately set out for this tournament to do here in Qatar?
I will try to say this with all the humility that I can say. So please forgive me. This is not in any way being too boastful, but absolutely yes. If you look back at 2009, 2010, and the promises that we made, whether it was in terms of the Compact World Cup and the benefits of a Compact World Cup, whether we talk about the accessibility of the tournament and the fact that it's accessible not only geographically, but even in terms of the system itself will allow for fans from different parts of the world to be able to attend and support their home teams, which normally would not be easily accessible for other tournaments. If you look in terms of what we said legacy-wise, how we're going to utilize this tournament as a catalyst for positive change, whether it's to upgrade the infrastructure development for the country that is in line with the country's overall development goals, whether it's in terms of some of the social changes that we saw the World Cup will be pioneering or at least pushing forward. It touched on all fronts. And then there's the one that I have to say all the time because everybody says we were blessed with a fantastic final. And I say absolutely yes, we were blessed, but it was not pure luck. When we talked about the Compact World Cup, we always mentioned from day one the fact if you're located in one place, you don't have to travel from one place to another, from one destination to another. The players will be able to be well rested and well focused on where it matters, which is on the pitch and representing their national teams. And if you look at the history and the narrative of the tournament, if you look at the group stages, 2 group stages basically, up until the last 15 minutes of the final matches, you didn't know who was going to qualify, up until the last 15 minutes. Every confederation had a team represented in the round of 16, first time in FIFA's history. You had home nations, or you had Arab countries that were, basically Morocco was playing at home. It intimidated the Spaniards when it came to the penalties, that even Luis Enrique himself was kind of scared about it. And what I say is that was also well thought out. I'm not saying that we knew exactly the outcomes, but we created the environment for the ideal system, even when it came to the football.
Does that make all of the criticisms, the positives, the media buzz, I mean, all of the buildup leading up to 2022, does it make it all worth it? Because I'm sure many people have seen the documentary that you're featured in. This was a lot on you personally, professionally. I mean, for the country, was all of that endured in good faith ultimately?
Yes, it was definitely worth it. I mean, it was, on me personally, but also I look around, the room, and there's a lot of people that have been with me on the journey from day one, and have joined us also later on, and had to also endure a lot of the pressure that it's the only tournament that's had that much attention for such a prolonged period of time. I mean, if we compare, for example, today, 2026, Canada, Mexico, US, you hear about it, but it's not really front page news. We had to endure that, that interest and that focus for 13 years. But I think what it did as well is that it motivated us even further. It always, as motivated as we were, it always also put kind of very clear goals and clear objectives for us to be able to kind of achieve on a daily basis. And it led to, what I will say is, I think in my opinion, my humble opinion, the best tournament, best football tournament, at least a 32 version of the best football tournament, not only for Qatar, which is one of the most important elements that we've always said. This was a tournament for the Arab world. And it went even further, I think, in 2022, it went even further to not only be a representative of the Arab world, which was a great success, but it was also of the global south. The fact that you had people from Africa, from Senegal, from Cameroon, able to travel easily and represent and support their teams, and then after that, go and represent their culture in Souguagaf, in Qatar. It was a cultural carnival of unprecedented nature, with everybody most of the Global South communities being represented. It was a great time.
How do you continue that positive change then? Because you mentioned the next World Cup, it is in the West. I mean, here in Qatar, what is it that's next? Because there was so much development that happened around these games. I mean, what can you do next with that?
Well, I think, again, you've definitely heard from the Minister of Tourism and from a lot of other people as well. We're continuing. Tourism is I think, the number one beneficiary. Tourism industry is the number one beneficiary of the World Cup. I believe in 2023 we had 4 million visitors, and the numbers keeps on increasing. We just recently hosted the Asian Football Championship, and again, record numbers not only in terms of attendance, but the nature of the fans as well. When the fans came, it was a celebratory event. It was our event. It was the Asian continent coming together and celebrating the event. And that in itself, I think, is a slight shift in terms of some of the Confederation events as well, that it kind of raises its profile. I won't say raises a profile, but it makes it much more celebratory and much more kind of tangible. So we're focusing a lot more on these events. Obviously, a big build-up on tourism. The infrastructure is ready, and the plans are coming ahead. And just today, I believe FIFA announced that we will be hosting the 3 future editions of the Arab Cup. And the Arab Cup was an idea that we had come up with. We had discussed with FIFA. It was our rehearsal, if you will, before the World Cup. So we hosted it in 2021. It was coming just off the end of COVID. So there was a lot of plans that we had to sit down and put in place and try to figure out how do we stress test our systems. But it also was a phenomenal celebration of the Arab world. And so I think that as a tournament in itself, coming and being here for the next three editions, is just a further indication of the future plans that we've got in place.
When we talk about celebratory, the Olympics is a global celebratory event for many people. I mean, do you think Qatar could potentially host the Olympics one year?
Can we? Absolutely, I think we can.
Would
we? I'll leave that to other people who are more, the officials who are considering this matter. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've expressed our interest in this matter in terms of hosting the Olympics. But I think it's not just limited to major sporting events. I mean, I think what we're looking at today is expanding beyond major sporting events, and how do we create the events industry, if you will, to kind of support the tourism in terms of attracting tourists from outside to within. But at the same time, it's also how do we build on the operational knowledge and the know-how that we had from the World Cup, which today you see a lot of the benefits out of it coming into play. Today, for example, this event itself and this platform in itself, from everything that I've heard, the amount of demand and the amount of interest that's come from the region for this event itself it's been an exponential increase. And it's just one example of, I'm not saying the World Cup specifically is the cause of it, but I think all the lessons learned, everything that was developed throughout the 13 years to host a momentous tournament was always done with the intention of all that knowledge, all that infrastructure continues pushing the engine of progress and of development, which was always planned for.
Do you think the games like the Olympics could potentially benefit, just considering all these other benefits that you noted in terms of being in the global south, obviously being representing the region? I mean, could the games benefit potentially from being in the Gulf?
You mean, could the games themselves benefit, or could the games benefit us? Just to clarify that question.
Let's do both. All
right, well, I think the games benefiting, absolutely. I mean, look, if there was, I'm going to repeat this and I'm going to be harking upon it because I do believe in this. If there's one thing that the World Cup, at least for me personally, has indicated, it is the fact that, when you look at the celebration, when you look at the fact that people from all over the world came here, the World Cup came to the fans, as opposed to most other tournaments. Fans would go to the tournaments, and especially when I'm talking about the world from the global south. It kind of shifted, if you will, the focus and the compass towards the fact that there is a huge population that is fanatical about sports, that is also pays attention to the capabilities or the ability of sports to push the developmental goals for the nation if utilized correctly. And it's ready to host. And so I think there's no doubts that every nation that hosts the tournaments, provided that they approach it in the right way, provided that this event does not become the end-all and be-all of your objectives.
We have seen that happen before.
Well, we have seen that. That's the thing. And look, I mean, our success is based upon also lessons learned. I don't want to give, what's it called, the negative examples, but there's been some very positive examples. Barcelona '92 is one perfect example of a successful tournament that launched the city of Barcelona into the global world in terms of being a destination. Provided you utilize the event in the right way, and again, it does not become that obsession that this event has to be perfect in all forms, regardless of any other consideration, I think the event will benefit the host nation. Now, whether the Olympics specifically, I'll give you my personal opinion. I think, yes, I think the sporting industry today is generally in the market. It's no longer competing with other sports. Today, I think the sporting industry is competing for people's attention. That's the marketplace today. Whether it's a specific sport, whether it's an event, or whether it's movies and entertainment. There's an evolution towards you're trying to capture people's attentions. And so at times you need to create the narrative and you need to create the connection with your fan base. So considering traditional markets is one thing, but there's a whole world out there that is ready to host, I think, and ready to utilize these events in the right way. But I think that consideration has to be made. And
you mentioned this briefly, but if not sports, are you looking to other entertainment sectors in order or to be the hub for the Arab world?
Well, I think the Arab world generally, there's obviously a very big interest in terms of, like I said, the events industry.
Yeah.
Right, the events/entertainment industry. So there's a big focus today, whether it's Qatar, whether it's Emirates, whether it's Saudi today, you see a lot of big moves happening. For example, today Saudi, I have to say they're doing a phenomenal job when it comes to the boxing industry. I'm a very big boxing fan, and the boxing matches that they're making happen and they're hosting as well is an indication of kind of where I think the Middle East and the Arab world is putting a lot of shift. There's obviously entertainment. I have maybe a particular view personally for me in terms of the entertainment side, and especially when it comes to content creation, film, series, and so on. I'm very bullish in that regards. I mean, today if you see the Korean film industry, and I've been repeating this for a long time, if you see the Korean film industry today, it is a huge market, it is a huge export for Korea. It's made its inroads. Streaming services obviously have allowed for it and have supported it in terms of its growth, although that's been happening over generations and over years and years. People today go towards Korea to gain IP. The Arab world, 400 million people, extremely creative. Storytelling is part of our culture. If you go from Morocco all the way down towards the Gulf, storytelling is within our culture. We have a common language and common background, but at the same time, there's a diversity in terms of our cultures. And it's in that diversity that allows us to also touch base with other cultures throughout the world. I think, and yet still, we still don't have our Squid Games, we still don't have our Parasites, there's still the ability to translate our creativity and our creative content into a commercially successful, widely viewed project, or at least product.
Yeah.
I think now there's a big shift. There is a huge shift. There's a lot of investment happening. There's a big shift towards that. Because I think, one, obviously it allows us to tell our story to the outside world, but I think in the end as well, looking at the success that the Korean film industry has been able to benefit economically, as well as exporting the Korean culture, this is, I think, the next big shift and the next big push from our side.
What is some of that investment? Where is it going towards?
I think it's going in a number of different areas. I think partly, looking at some investment in terms of production houses, infrastructure development.
Locally?
Locally, regionally as well. I mean, and again, I also want to take a step back by saying, the film industry in particular, I don't want to kind of seem like it's nascent. Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, even, Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar. We're storytellers by nature. And in my opinion, some of the best, if you're going to ask for me personally, top 50 movies in history, there's at least 5 or 6 Arabic movies in there, easily. Top 15, actors and actresses in history. For me personally, there's at least 2 or 3 Arabs easily. So it's not something nascent, but I think it needs to kind of evolve to the next step. It needs to take the next step. So in terms of production houses, in terms of a bit of infrastructure, in terms of, I think, upgrading the capabilities when it comes to script writing, maybe some of the action scenes and so on, like stunt creation or stunt development, below the line, above the line kind of investments, and that's happening. You're seeing that happening today. There's a lot that's happening, and I think step by step you're going to see. I think in the next 5-6 years, a very big push when it comes to Arabic content.
Oh, wow. Where do you think there are still gaps? I mean, we touched on fashion. I mean, do you think that's potentially another opportunity for Qatar to step in?
Fashion, I mean, we've hosted our fashion houses or fashion events over here. I think, Arabic fashion is, there are some fashion designers out here. I'm not an expert in fashion, so I can't speak too much about it, so I apologize if I sound very, very naive, but I think, of course, absolutely. I mean, there's some phenomenal fashion designers. I think anything creative, when you look at the Arab world, and you look at Qatar in particular, I mean, if you look at, Qatar Creates and Msherib, for example, I think we recently hosted the Christian Dior kind of legacy showcase. And it was a phenomenal representation, but I think it showcased, and it also we showcased a lot of young, up-and-coming fashion designers. And it's kind of trying to bring back the, the traditional, but with the young and new. And that's kind of coming gradually within a lot of the initiatives that Qatar Creates is doing as well.
But ultimately, it seems like the best return on investment is sports, for the World Cup. No,
I will say this. I think the best return on investment, you mean in terms of what creates the best return on investment? Look, it's the World Cup. The simple reality is I'm going to take away from sports. It's the World Cup. It is the biggest sporting event in the world, regardless of anything else. I don't think it's still taken its full value yet. I mean, if you compare, for example, the Super Bowl, 30-second clip, $7 million versus, all the revenue that the World Cup makes up. Obviously, there's a big disparity, but it's the World Cup. It's the biggest sporting event in the world. So it is the biggest opportunity. And so it creates it's the biggest risk, and at the same time, it creates the biggest rewards. If you utilize it correctly, yes, the payback is quite satisfying and quite long-term. That's what we did.
The risk in terms of scrutiny?
Well, it's not just the scrutiny. I mean, it's the biggest event in the world, absolutely. Scrutiny, everybody's looking at you. We had a higher level of risk compared to everybody else because of the interest, because of the scrutiny and the focus, absolutely. But I think what it ended up doing was, again, as I said, the payback to all the people that thought from day one things were going to fall apart. I think what people saw was a great tournament. The Arab world, not just Qatar, but the Arab world hosting the rest of the world here. And it was a global cultural celebration where the global South took center stage. Apart from, of course, all the infrastructure that you get to experience and see, which was all part of the plan. But it's the World Cup. I think every other sporting event or cultural event has its own unique payback period as well. You have to look at the risk profile and kind of what benefits you can get out of and extract out of it. And you have to approach each one very, very, I think, surgically to kind of plan for the future.
And if that is the peak, personally, professionally, as you've noted, I mean, how do you top that? What do you do, what do you do next, but what would you, what would you be interested in?
You build upon it. I mean, as I said, today we've hosted the Asian Cup, the most successful edition of the Asian Cup. There's other sporting tournaments that are in place, but there's also a lot of other conferences and other events as well that are coming into play. There are discussions in terms of focusing on a little bit more of the entertainment side of things, and I think the Minister of Tourism has mentioned it. Saad's mentioned it a number of different times. But also, you look at again. I don't want to underestimate the platforms such as these. Today, Bloomberg is a great platform, but I think there's opportunities to build even further on this platform. Web Summit was a great success, and I think if you look at the Web Summit in particular, it's if you will, the equivalent of the major sporting event comes to the people. Web Summit came to the people. It's a great event. People, all entrepreneurs, and especially initially techies, but all entrepreneurs yearn to go and want, see it in Lisbon. Some people, from South America had the opportunity to see it in certain places in Singapore. Today, people from the Middle East and Africa were able to come. And it's bringing these events. And you build upon them, obviously. There's a great demand. There's a great demand that in itself will unleash a lot of opportunities and a lot of potential. And the capability and the ability to be, a world-class host is here, and we're just building on that. So, like I said, there's the Web Summit, the Bloomberg Doha Forum, at the end of the year. These are all conferences that I think will benefit and will build upon and become, household names down the road.
And what about personally, just really quick?
Personally, what's the question? Personally,
how do you build off of the peak that was the World Cup?
Well, I think first thing I have to come to realize that was the peak, in the sense of there's nothing that's ever going to be that intense. I have to come to terms with that. 13 years of intense work, 13 years of this World Cup becoming your obsession, daily in and out. I think I finally come to terms with it this year, by the way. That's why the time difference always, when people talk to me, it was 2023, 2022 was last week. Yeah. I think now I'm coming to terms with the fact that it'll never, but it's a very unique experience. I've got to come to terms with the fact that it's, that is there. Now move on to the next passion. But the passion will never, as of now, will not necessarily equate to it. When you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and at the time it was BlackBerries, looking at the red dot, knowing that you've got an email and you knowing it's from a certain entity and you've got to respond within the next 12 hours, and then something's going on with the stadiums and everything is moving along, and then lo and behold, COVID hits. That kind of drama, very difficult to follow.
Yeah, hopefully.
But there's good stuff to, not to say there's good stuff to come, within the sports and entertainment sector.
Absolutely. Your Excellency, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.